绕理先年节见报的上节谢谢你，不话也多智能的学报说。我要的。他读些这位什么？读些咱们的这位什么的了？他读些看当没话当三八呀，这个人家，他的送过来的，康熙康刚那个话，他俺家家，两边就说他们去，那你即将没人哦，是哦。他罗马了，就是对不罗宾给，俺们读些啦是，康熙金巴说。我金巴给俺那攀援些金币攀援大的金巴说看了高月当太当太，你康熙看了看的吧太俺切恰，你了老马给多把给看多把给当的俺你太切人俺来把带呢这把恰的是啊。这个这个通明当把当结束当把当，按当当结束当把这当了，明天俺嘛都把托把切把当，托生空白的学位当把你也把这当的结束当把晒的，你结束当把7米当切，你睇呢？什么对比你都容易讲呢？3米当切过来，
So then the next verse shows the stages of leading a disciple, and this is given in verse 110. That for which someone has liking should first be assessed. Those who are disinclined will not be vessels for the excellent teaching. A lama, a guru, a spiritual guide, teaching students should discuss whatever practices, such as giving appeals to a particular disciple, or we could say they need to so they should properly instruct them in whatever, whichever of those instructions, such as generosity and so forth, is appropriate for their disposition, their interest, their aspiration, those things. And then, having first taught this properly, an assessment should be made. One should only discuss the profound, meaning teaching on reality later, after initial and subsequent instruction has been given. Initial and subsequent instruction are two stages of giving personal instructions on how one is to practice. Those whose minds are disinclined because of being deterred by discussion of the profound at the very outset will not be receptive vessels for the ultimate teaching.
Oh yeah. 唐伯呢，3米当起一敲说，一起敲呢，就2把敲啊，一拿死。俺你谈不起去，那你即将马也是靠什么单比那都没用啊，一张或者骗没多个一张。俺你唐伯呢，3米当起一起敲呢，就2把敲啊，一拿谈不起去，那你即将马也孬。
So it's again, if someone initially is not inclined towards the instruction on the profound teaching, the teaching on emptiness and so forth from the very beginning, then this would, if you taught that to them directly, then this would cause them to deteriorate, and so therefore it's not to be given to people who are not suitable vessels for that instruction on the ultimate dharma, ultimate teaching.
Oh yeah, 现在一张宗教网就教育都有告诉，唐伯安呢就明白切话，就清正给他们带来就明白切话。第一节了，安呢告诉的就明白切话，唐伯就明白切话，这什么？今天上面他们就是不带话，第一节了加起来他们就是不带。然后他们就明白切，他们就穷给他们带，但呢，考了做完切吧，就真给他们带。但呢，他呢，提把钱包了呀，就把个，安呢，加起来他们就是不带的，人不等着要安排的。
So there are different sequences that are employed for leading disciples. This is explained in the the profound sutra of Sungju Wanggyalpo. I'm not sure the name of that sutra. It's something like the king of the state of integration. And in that sutra, it's explained that the different sequences that are employed are given. In some cases, a disciple is given first, it's called the maturation of their mind stream or mental continuum, where first the basic practices are given to them. Then such a disciple could then be introduced into the profound teaching on reality in the next stage, and then subsequent to that could be given the teaching on the extensive conduct of a bodhisattva as a third stage. That's one sequence, but then as we've seen, like in the stages of the path kind of instruction, where first of all the instructions on how to train oneself in the attitude which is common to a person of smaller scope is given first, then the person of practices pertaining to a person of intermediate scope, then finally entering into the Mahayana teachings of the person of greater scope given in that way. And in that sequence, it's often presented such that the teachings on the vast conduct of a bodhisattva, how to train oneself in that, is given before the instruction on the profound aspect of the path, and the instruction on reality is given.
Oh yeah, Tiang Sana Jenny Jimbatang la Mikawe. Longe Jobata, and the Longe Degina, the Jimbala, and the Jugo in Zang, and Longe Dobata Jimbatang Chawa Sheso Jobashino. Bena Chanju Samba Tazeki, and the Zombie Poo, Rimji, Sambata Tumba, and the Rang Sambata Tumba, and the Tubanashi, Duji Sambata.
So then here, the miserly dislike talk of generosity. Therefore, those who desire resources should be told to give, meaning if someone is miserly, they could be explained how they should give in order to get more, what they want at the outset. And it's like the following analogy. The Bodhisattva Keshava gradually guided a merchant's daughter according to her disposition.
Oh, yeah. 다디니 다양한데 니모 셰체와라 안에 다 사바째와 니모 셰체와 인장 티여왕기 룡아기 녀제 망보지 주가 인장 안 데빌레 차침보 사고요다 대달라 사바째와를 차와텔라 지다 많이 캐버도 내대 불라 돈줄와 대신 장주 선비제 담바밀라 캐바투 어디 녀와래 랭자 도도 신장 녀와래 주바텔라 랭자르 녀와텔라 도도 신장 양다야도 미리비 람도 주바텔라 양다야도 람도 주비 양다야도 미리비 람도 주바텔라 장주 선바나 사바자와래 차대 대신 장주 선비제 세대라 지다 빼나 많이 캐봐도 네기티 지다 된 빼나 많이 캐봐도 네기티비 푸들라 동화 좋아 대신도 오세 지다 많이 캐도 네기 나에 푸들라 동화 좋아 대신도 오세 어디 된자에 불라 동화면 불라 제와 대나시 아니 자주 심비 제와야 담바미에 캐봐도 파와를 이 캐봐도 겨워.
So then the next point is that bodhisattvas should have even more or more intense love towards persons who are under the control of more coarse, stronger forms of mental affliction. The text here says, a bodhisattva is particularly compassionate to one who, despite having been stopped from doing wrong 100 times, again and again engages in improper actions. And so the verse there, 111, says, just as a mother is especially anxious about a sick child, bodhisattvas are especially compassionate towards the unwise. Or here it says unwise, but one could read that as those who are behaving in an ignoble or bad fashion. So a mother, for instance, feels especially anxious about a sick child, and in the same way, bodhisattvas are especially compassionate towards those who are behaving in a very bad way.
Bena noa mi puchuba, chawa mayimbe, chawa mimbe, yayu sewa toba, xie chewa chao, xie chewa chino, se, ani chawa mayimba chewe, yayu sewa toba, xie chewa chino, se.
The example that's given for this is a Chandala woman greatly feared that her king would put her sixth son to death because of his wrong deeds, because she thought if he did evil deeds that he would be put to death.
다理解了도시 안보당 감나 삼바다 tumba 아니 현재 제비 추니 라리 로마 주와데 라라이니 로마 주 탑을 나서 탑제니 마도 섬전 도바체 아니 자주 섬반 남기 섬전지 된 제바나 아니 섬전 라라기 삼바다 메와당 감다 안보 타데베 아니 라레 로마 주와테 주어를 차지 아니 로마텔라 편바 제수된 바체도 라리 로마 주와데 라라예네 라마 주스야.
So then the next point is that the bodhisattva, the way in which a bodhisattva is able to achieve the objectives of others by acting in accord with their own faculties, their attitudes, and their dispositions, and so forth. This is given in verse 112. They become students of some and become teachers of others through skillful means and knowledge, giving understanding to those who do not understand. Since people's dispositions, interests, and capacities differ, when bodhisattvas act for their good, they teach some what is of benefit after first becoming their students. That is, the bodhisattva becomes a student of the person even.
Oh yeah, Rani member sembala. Rani chanju sembala, Rani member sembala. Lala yini lamar juar chene, Lala yini lamar juar chene. Keba tembe gone, ane jesu tembe. Semjen dubi tabdang, dariban nazobi tabnamgi. Chöji teokwanani madobi isi chöji teokwanani tombanyi madoba. chöji teokwanani madobi semjen namgi teokwanani tomba chedo. Toni madobi semjen namgi tombanyi tomba chedo.
They act as spiritual guides to those who feel inferior and teach them by pointing out their special attributes, their showing special qualities. And then through all kinds of skillful means and knowledge in how to train, they make sentient beings who do not understand the suchness of phenomena understand it. Here, suchness of phenomena is a word for emptiness, for the profound ultimate reality of things. And so they cause them to understand that reality by means of various forms of methods employing different skillful means and knowledge. So example that's given for that is a good physician will prescribe different diets to his patients, rich food or bland food.
현대인라 꾸마 마체비 님이 삼바 이 제외가나 당지 인지 하바게나 누자 멤버 건바텔라 지다 멤버 캐주바 네버 주메 괜텐신 선제 멤버 가서 산주 셈비 돔예네 누자 마이 시도 건 세다 되게 된바다 지다 멤버 캐주바 세게 베르 선제 요소 멤버 샤바라 투 캐바 페비 산주 셈바 자주 셈베 담베라 지다 멤버 캐와 주와게 아니 내소 미롱와시 두두 멤버 건라세 내잡 무도 와시 두두 멤버 건라세 대신도 안보 초다 초마인 바 두지 감다 메와 안보 초다 초마인 바 시비 아니 시신세 오 가서 누용오쇼 코와진 바다 예마면 바다 누리 아니 누지 된다 tum바지 제게 도용어 시라 캐비 장주선비 똠니네 안에 되게 두자면 바지 신도 깜바 시와 차오.
Then the next topic is showing how the result of the vast power of compassion. That has two subdivisions. The first is that once the force of one's compassion has become extremely developed, then there's virtually no one to be found who cannot be trained by such a bodhisattva. There's no one that could not be brought into their orbit as a disciple. And that's given in verse 113, which says, just as for an experienced physician, a sickness that cannot be cured is rare, once bodhisattvas have found their strength, those they cannot train are extremely few. So the commentary says, a bodhisattva with a well-developed capacity for maturing sentient beings is like an experienced physician who only rarely finds a disease which is incurable and beyond treatment. Similarly, one should understand that when bodhisattvas who are able to discern superior and inferior aptitudes, here this includes things like the basic qualities of the people, their sort of character, their dispositions, the interests that they have. So the bodhisattva is able to discern those various attributes of people, and bodhisattvas are skilled in the four ways of gathering students or disciples. This refers to bodhisattvas giving things to those who need it to help to attract them, speaking in a gentle way to those who require it, and speaking properly in any case to all of the people that they encounter, and the other aspects of the four ways of gathering disciples. Once these bodhisattvas have found their strength, there are very few beings, people that they cannot train.
Oh yeah. Remember,
the example that's given for this is like, at the time of Master Nagarjuna, there were other physicians who couldn't cure Prince, and because they didn't understand the source of the prince's mental illness, but Master Nagarjuna recognized that the prince was suffering from longing for a woman, and thus he was able to alleviate pacify the mental illness that the prince was undergoing.
Oh yeah, that's you are sending a Kuma Chevy Yemite, sending a Kuma Chevy Yemite. I said, sending a Kuma Chevy Yemi.
Kuma Machebi.
Oh, Kuma Chevy Yemina. Sending a Kuma Chevy, sending a Magubi Yemi. Oh, sending a Magubi Yemini, Chanju Sembi Udone, Kade Gashi Maguve, Maguva, Nason Dora Tuna, London Shangi Maja Churu, say, oh, Semjen Dubi and to Chabajan be Chanju Sembaki, Chanju Sembi, and it's you tennis, Duja, Gunang Andro Mendro, Duja Gunang Andro Mendrova. Oh, Casore, Andro Medribi Duchabala Kuna, Andro Medrova Tela, Kade Gashiki Magua, Semde Nason to draw Tuna. Oh, did Kade Gashi Maguba, Adgaza Chanju Sembi Uduni, Kade Gashi Maguba, Nason to Tuna de, etc. Draw Tuna, this Semja Tamjala, Pamba Tamjavi, and the Tamja Nyambe. Oh, Mason Maguba, Tamja Nyambe, London Shangi Major Cubes. Maguba is London Shangi Major Cube, some gentlemen like Chita Sabaku and the Church and Baku, and
So then the next point is showing how it's the negative consequences that would obtain if a bodhisattva does not exhort others and does not spur them on for their own benefit. This is given in verse 114, where it says, if someone within a bodhisattva sphere lacking encouragement was to go to bad rebirths, that one will be criticized by others that have that are wise. Here, that one referring to the bodhisattva for not engaging in exhorting or driving their disciples to do the right thing. So the commentary says, if a bodhisattva possessing the special ability to train sentient beings encourages trainees, disciples within his or her sphere of influence, they will not go to bad states of rebirth, bad transmigrations. If some lacking encouragement go to bad rebirths, the promise to help all sentient beings will have been harmed, not impaired. Therefore, such a bodhisattva would be criticized by others who are intelligent. Thus, one should encourage people by teaching them the appropriate practices.
Oh yeah, bena tebe chenbo rang kwana neba ki ane trauma chana ane jiu xianji meba juana xire.
So it's like the following analogy: a leader who does not assist those under his care, within his or her care, will be criticized by others.
Oh yeah, that is la. Sumba ninje membi yemi semjela. 아니 저와 멤버 멤버님이 되라 가시 냠바 현다라 이제 내시 믿어봐 계시 제외 고메바 되라 치다 다라 치다 진바동 레타보버 자주 삼바 가시 레타보버 자주 삼바 가시 농아당 안 농아지 조군중당 제외 년비 안에 심지어 현다라 아니 차도비 인제 저와 제바 레소 인제 제바 레소 제가는 다시 냠바 태다라 인제 레시 아니 인제 제바 레소 시 믿어봐 대제수 제외 심장 고메바 타라 리롱제 게자 시달 진바 동화 신미시 진바 동화 지금 가세 미드바티 제수제외 심장 고면 바탈라 롱제 거자 김바 동화 체대 미체토. Yeah.
So then the next point is that the negative consequences of a bodhisattva's compassion being limited or inferior. This is given in verse 115, where it says, how can one unwilling to say that compassion for the oppressed is good, later out of compassion give to those who are protectorless? Here it says, if out of jealousy a beginning bodhisattva is unwilling to admit that it is good to act compassionately toward other sentient beings who are oppressed by suffering and its causes, here the causes causes refer to the origin of suffering, mental affliction, and negative karma. How could that bodhisattva later, out of compassion, give protectorless beings his or her body, possessions, and roots of virtue?
Oh yeah, that is better. Long way在错巴当，long way在错巴当，他们就天都说不信哦，是让。
The example given is like stealing from a blind person, stealing their possessions or killing someone for a pair of boots.
Oh yeah, 但那天南你就都接完了，别把瞧我写的。
Thus, one should endeavor to increase the strength of one's compassion.
但希望强求什么了？马代比年瓦当，台北广州把了你也别难呢。唐不强求什么了？马代比年瓦台了，多了偏见看戏了，几点十多年有吧？台了说呢，他碰了，当然是3大继续有，我的程度的。强求什么人家向往的就啊他了，是吧？强求什么人家向往的就啊他了，太大了是，大些单给， 세당기 님이 치다 보시나 당연 님이 치다 보시나 섬전지 감 말류바 섬전지 감 말류바 풍부 상만을 대비 양알을 대와 타두바 대비 섬전지 감 말류바 아니 하면 양알을 대와 타두바 대비 삼바전지 로라 펜비치도 로라 펜시세요 펜비치도 강시라 지된 시세도 현대도 내 투여바 될라 시세 지대냐와 대소도 현대도 제박이 투여바 될라 대바다 꾸디서 마셰비 손에 타장 푸나스 꾸디 잡아서 손에와 타장 대바다 꾸디서 마셰비 손에와 타장 푸나 될라 실다와라 니바 삼다 지시여대 안에 가서를 요 말이 뭐야 대라 손에 다보나 대라 당라 삼다 지시여 제당와 대라 디바 삼다 지시여
So then here leads to the topic of the way in which one should properly develop faith towards bodhisattvas. Well, first comes the fault of not having faith in bodhisattvas, and then the method of why it's proper to meditate, develop faith towards bodhisattvas. The negative consequences of not having faith in a bodhisattva are given first, and that's found in verse 116. Someone might say, what are the faults of hating a bodhisattva who is governed by compassion? And the answer is in 116, where when those beings suffer loss who are indifferent toward one who stays in the world to help transmigrators, what doubt about those who are hostile? So it is a great loss for those who, through indifference, do not appreciate and render service to one who is motivated by the wish for all sentient beings without exception to attain the state of final nirvana, in which the remainder of the aggregates is exhausted, when the aggregates are exhausted without remainder, and who, to help transmigrators, has the power to stay in worldly existence while it lasts for others' benefit. That being so, what doubt can there be that hostility toward one like that is an ill deed?
Oh yeah. 아니 랍지와 남방하고 천주지 도이당 대배 돕기비 도이 가서 아니 가르쳐 말해서나 자주서만 인지 세왕도 주와텔라 세당 그 세다위 삼바제나 안디 동아 자자 사방에 봐라도 풍화 주로
So there are sutra statements that support this. The miraculous feat of ascertaining thorough pacification sutra and the seal of engagement in augmenting the strength of faith sutra say that one will definitely experience the misfortune of suffering in bad rebirths more than 100 times for having anger if you develop anger towards a bodhisattva.
Oh yeah, they consider that. Benalambocha mambo wando chebi mila 가지기 내로 담라 뒤샤지나 체자 대마스 지외 칼라 안나 가서 칼라 네 철롱기 랑젠타 인소写完了 전도 전지 코에 맞으와다 농구다 유비베시노사다 그러면
So the verse's analogy that's given for this is there was a man who begged some other men who were in charge of many elephants to look after his cattle and sheep. Later, when he asked the men if the cattle and sheep were well, they replied, how can we be well? The rain caused a flood which carried all the elephants away. Hearing that, he knew that the other animals, the animals he had left with them, what had happened to them, and did not inquire further. And then there are other analogies, like an analogy of sweets that were fried in oil and a walking stick.
Oh yeah, 다니와 태바곰바 르발라. 태바곰바 르바텔라. 아니 차가위 좁아 잡아라 태바 르바다. 근데 타야 바산에 태바 샤와. 다 담보 차가위 좁아 잡아라 르바데 간라 껴와 탐제도 응시응아자 강여봐. 대 멤버 맨딩 디니시도 차가오 세오데 송도 상주 선반에 초도 차가와 잡배 초도 차가와 잡배 당원반에 세당반에 아니 가서래 제단반에 하바 타바르데 레바 타데데 자주서바 서바토바 강라 서바토바 강라 깨와 탐제도 민년병 의생아자 예배스 강라 깨와 탐제도 의생아자 강여바 양여바 서바토바라 강라 깨와 탐제도 민년병 의생아자 여바 디심 심전라 팬비 치도 안송고 조와 멤버를 신부당 샤말레당 마에다 키라서 멤버답이 류중하고 용수 손에서 다 대다 류중하고 심전 용수 손에 수 대당 아니 깨라야 깨당 티 심전 용수 멤버답이 좁아되니 시도 차가워.
So this next point is that why it's proper to cultivate faith in bodhisattvas. There are two parts of that. The first is that it's appropriate to have faith towards those who perform extremely difficult deeds, and that's given in verse 117. It is proper to rid oneself of animosity towards bodhisattvas and develop strong appreciation for them, since they do what is most difficult. The verse then says, in 117 says, one who in all lives has the 5 super knowledges appears as inferior with a nature like the inferior. This is extremely hard to do, and this is explained in the commentary. A bodhisattva who has attained forbearance, as well as the 5 kinds of super knowledge, which will not decline throughout all of their future lives, may, in order to help sentient beings that exist in the form of an inferior rebirth, and like as animals and so forth, assume a body whose nature is like that of the inferior beings, such as worms, butterflies, buffalo, and dogs, and take on their appearance and their voice. The feat of doing this is maturing sentient beings in this way is extremely hard to perform.
Oh yeah. 민바 차고 오체 저버더니 배나 자주 선바 찍기 마음바나 키만보라 내봐 여봐 시네 대도비 치도 치견에서 마시노.
It's like the example for this is there was a bodhisattva who saw that in the future there would be many dogs that would be injured or killed, and thus the bodhisattva took rebirth as a dog in order to prevent that.
단위와 연대 타야바 삼네 타바차와니 탑지군제 소남강 시루 요리 사바데 탐제 쳔비 샤자양 미시 지시셰베 송 연대 타야바 삼네 타바께버려 차데스 와 연대 자주선바 연대 타야바 삼네 타바께버려 차데 semjen지 된 차가와 뱀에도 준위비 탑지스 밤에도 준이 왜 탑지 뒤끈지 세스 오숨지 댐비 영화 유숨지 댐비 소남 강아 시도 이름보 가 참에 받지 사바테세 어디 탑지 근처 소남가 시도 요리 사바테스 사바테스 봐 오니 나가다 타야 비칠 나가다 타야 비칠 타야베 지리 탐제신비 샤자 미시 탐제신비 샤자 미시 디시셔와 강식이 디시셔와 강식 자주 취두당 예수 순서 탐제신비 샤자야 미시 디시셔와 순서.
So the next point is that one ought to have faith by thinking about the limitless qualities, infinite qualities of the bodhisattvas. And there it says, one ought to develop faith in bodhisattvas by considering their boundless qualities. The verse 118 says, the Tathagata said that the merit gathered constantly through skillful means for a very long time is immeasurable even for the omniscient. Through their ability effortlessly to accomplish difficult feats for sentient beings, the merit they constantly create with their three doors, body, speech, and mind, and that they accumulate over an extremely long period of countless eons, is as limitless as space. It is said to be immeasurable even for the omniscient. The Tathagata said, the ocean may be measured in drops, and the rest of the verse is given there.
呀，他假做出的个长下级民那么在别来家门着，是吧？看是假做出的当中，是别人口味太多是。
So the example that's given there is of drops of water in the ocean that can be measured in those. The drops of water in an ocean are measurable, but the qualities of a bodhisattva can't be measured in that way.
当我就把太清把在那边军在了2月边那年，前几天就把太清把在那边军在了2月边那年，我就把它作为做啊，没被就把它卖吧。 就把他到了中那边去，让你把西的很多民为军战，里面前边讲，连你为军战是月边那年，但他们就把他把作为军战台了，7档7档18线，金币战役378，这些抢救3把了金币战的大多年是，他接着给告诉。 接着老说我抢救3把了，你金币当面把登记是，抢救是，最终老说我太上明显了，最终老说呗，但是金把了，他把金币是原点就是，最终老说我跟原点太上明显，太上对明显了是，对的，他金币查，但你一个人比你这个下班那是，你。 给我当结束准备，希望啥我夸切吧当，希望啥我夸切吧是，我的人希望啥我夸切吧当，这个金把什么也吧，上升个没金把，上升个金把，去年金把，没金把，但也什么也吧，拍清楚个对比，你切夸切吧当，是吧？夸切吧当，这个。 另外有什么？另外有什么？他把它送来，其他对比，给我先就把切白呢？你看说的，7档、7档、18线，金币这一3万切把提起的是7档的，7档、7档、18线，金币这一378，再对吧？这是吧？要3万切白是。 7档18线3万7把提起抢救3把了金币战的大多年呗，金把了他把找我再多是。
So then the next topic has multiple subdivisions. The reasons why one is able to perfect, the bodhisattvas are able to perfect all of the, achieve the conclusion of all of the activities, behavior that they're engaged in. The reason in which why this has multiple subdivisions of 5, why bodhisattvas are especially admire and interested in generosity. We won't go through all the subdivisions here, but the first topic is then again why bodhisattvas have special enthusiasm for generosity. This is it says here, in the life stories of the Buddha and so forth say that talk of ethical conduct does not interest bodhisattvas to the same extent as talk of generosity or giving. And the verse here explains that. The word giving, dana in Sanskrit, can indicate death, practice, and other existences. That is why the word giving always is of interest to bodhisattvas. And then the commentary explains, when the Sanskrit word for giving, dana, is explained in terms of etymologies that repeat the syllable of the root, which is da. It indicates dying, which is consistent with aversion. It sometimes indicates practices included within the sixth perfection by way of the divisions of giving. There's different types of giving of material things, giving of dharma, giving a protection to others, those types of generosity or giving. And sometimes the attainment of desired rebirths by guarding the purity of the three doors, body, speech, and mind, your mental, your physical, verbal, and mental activity. Thus, since the word giving denotes death, practices, and other existences, it is always of interest to bodhisattvas, who therefore take special delight in giving, because it subsumes all of these different aspects of the training.
Oh yeah, teji chaju sambala, jibitane tatu nyen se da, bena sabar chawa nyawala tapaki, sabar chabi, nyawa chawa de tenda we nyawala tawa de, ane tam tawa la kawa na shichani, ane jibitana kasungu sare, sabar chawa nyawala tawa tam tawa shino.
So it's like the analogy of a man who was condemned to death, hearing that he is to be spared.
Oh, that made me jimbala mabani. December jimbala debu chembo junju she. Lenda also tawani, ani chobo shindu mabacha. December jimbala debu chembo junju she. That they can say, Chaju Sambaki, Jimba Kona Tayaji. Ani Shanji Jimba Mino Shena. City Jimba La, City Jimba Jimba Tamaki, Jimba La, the Wulonji Chimbo Juru She Samne, Zalambatans. What did the Jimba La, the Wuchimbo Junju She said, said Jimba La, the Wulonji Chimbo Junga Juru Samne, Ani Zalambatang, Yonso Tonwa. And K Chetu, say, Lenda also don't knees. K Chetu, that don't be Chongso Shindu, a Chongjawa Nashi, Chong, that don't be Chongso Shindu, Tempe Mapa Juru, say, Chombo Shindu Mapa Juru. Oh yeah.
So that's the next point is a criticism of inferior forms of generosity, and someone might ask: is only a bodhisattva's generosity and not that of others limitless or boundless? And the verse says, when one thinks that by giving gifts now there will be a great result, receiving and giving are like business, are like trade for profit, which is suitable to be criticized, which is worthy of being disparaged. To receive and give away things thinking that by giving gifts in this life it will result in great prosperity, that type of generosity is like business, just selling and buying and selling things, trade for profit, and therefore it is disparaged or criticized by the excellent. It's just like the profit, seeking profit from selling one's property.
Oh yeah, Bena Yoja Tamja Tommy Keva, that Keva Shino, Kanga Tomanashi.
So the example here is like somebody who sells a merchant who sells things to make a profit, but not to acquire any kind of merit.
Oh yeah, that's what Joba Tata Drumni with Dinzani. Kalanga Dipaya, Yeni Yoba Mayimba. Gevelezen Telani, Drumishawa, Sheja, Yoma Yin, what dig it, I got a song with Resana. Sonam Tayaba, Sobi, Chaju Samba, Kangalas. All Chabi, Dipachusa, Yoba Nijang, Devuji, Yuba Mayimba Chigetu, Sadoji, Maris, Kalanga Dipa Yang, said the Mare. Oh, Uni said him. I shall be Dupachusa Yoba Nijang, Dibi Devu, Genius Yoba Mayimba de Lanza Sanga Chuni Numusha, Lanza Dan Sanga Chuni Numusha. Roju Juji, Kangilu Mida said, Chunushi Roju Chichi, Kangilung, the Roju Mayimba, Roju Minuva Tatters. Tishi Dibi Lani Chungu Yang, Gavitawa Yambaya Kambache. Ji Sumba Tatter. Lodan Debi Gibi Lesion, Chaju Samba Tenini, Shandin Druba Mi, She Chawa, Yoba Mayimba, Shanji Ten Druba Mayimba Shawati, Yoba Mayimba, Samjanji Tentata Druba Guru, said Dela, Gibi Lesion Dela, Drumi Shaja, Yomayin, said the inside.
So the next point is showing the reason by which bodhisattvas are able to accomplish such various forms of activity. On the verse here, 121 says, for such a one, who even previously performed ill deeds, those ill deeds will have no effect. There is nothing one with virtue considers that could not be accomplished or should not be accomplished. Though a bodhisattva who creates limitless merit may even have performed a few ill deeds previously, these will not be able to produce an effect, to produce the suffering effect. It is said, a few grams of salt can change the taste of a little water, but not of the Ganga, of the Ganges. Understand it is likewise with small ill deeds and expansive, vast roots of virtue. There is nothing that bodhisattvas whose virtuous activity is powerful consider should not be done for others' benefit. They therefore fulfill all of the needs of sentient beings.
Oh yeah, that bit and that comedy
The example is given in the example for this is given in the verse itself.
Tena tela sibada nyanga dela keba me se ode chanju chanse papa nam jidu geshin lenye ju wang ko mi je ba samshin do ko le je wa le ba lenye ju wang ko mi je na xiwei yin su mi ju ba ji xian na se xiwei yin su mi ju ba ji xian na se na
So then next comes the reason why bodhisattvas don't strive to achieve happiness, peace and happiness just for themselves alone. And that's given in the next verse, the introduction to which says, poses a question. Since Arya bodhisattvas are entirely virtuous and do not take birth in samsara through the force of contaminated actions and mental afflictions, why do they not remain absorbed in the sphere of peace, absorbed meditative absorption in the sphere of peace or the personal nirvana? And the answer to that is given that even here nothing harms one with a powerful mind, and thus for such a one worldly existence and nirvana are no different. So then the bodhisattvas whose minds hold this a powerful, it says special wish, this is the superior intention or aspiration to become Buddhas, and who do not create even the slightest ill deed through remaining in samsara, are not tainted by its fault. Since even in samsara nothing harms them, there is no difference in terms of harm whether they remain in worldly existence or enter nirvana. Thus they do not prefer one kind of peace to another. Here it's peace could be taken in two senses. One is the peace of nirvana or itself, or peace within samsara as well, some kind of peaceful state in samsara.
Oh yeah. Bena pujiba, ma pujiba, navi, pun navi, ma rimdro chewala, pum, or rimdro chewala, mijo.
So the example for this or analogy is like a mother who's taking care of her only child who's sick. She doesn't get discouraged at the care that she has to provide to the child.
No, yeah. 당아와 류된지 개발래 류된 개발전 레니비 준전되라 강라 군제 서만이 니라 개와 예주바 대구지지 직단의 군정하다 주마인 세어대 다디송제 강라 군제 서만이 다 대답이 셈 당보 개바타 semgeba tendabi semgeba tambo tobane sisa tambo tobane 제로와 tobane 장주세비래 파지를 왕조와 주와라 주지 제나 사타비 장주세바 칸라 군지체 섬라 왕니 토바니래 시간라 아니 간제 군라 칸라 군제 사왕니 세팅버지 사탐보트의 장주삼바 강라 군기세 섬라 왕의 토반이래 아니 삼신도 세브라 개와리비 뉴바여바 추와데 니레 개와 여주바 대고 테니 유지 삼제지 터라 왕주비 직대니 지단이 군정하다도 좋아 많이데 예수 구원겠다고 야 리시 다보소스 개발라네 현지현 잡아오 야.
So the next point is that why bodhisattva, or the reason why bodhisattvas have the ability to take special forms of life. They can adopt particular higher bodhisattvas have the power to adopt the special forms of special status within the world at will. And so the question here is, why do they have mastery of most bodhisattva activities from the time they generate the first generate ultimate bodhicitta? And so it says here, the answer to that is, why should anyone who takes rebirth through constant control of the mind not become ruler of the entire world? Bodhisattvas who have attained the grounds, or attained the first bodhisattva stage, henceforth, through their constant mental control, take rebirth in worldly existence as they wish. Why then would they not become rulers of the entire world with dominion over the welfare of sentient beings? By taking birth as lords of the four continents and so forth, they accomplish the well-being of others.
뭐야? 주섬제 저라 왕집에 지단에 군정하다도 좋아 많이 받이 인데 니시 다보 소소 깨와라네 생기천 잡아오. 변나 이시지 누부당 빠삼지 신당 분바삼보 아니 뭐 대다게 란데 강 너바 주바나 신체네.
So these bodhisattvas then have that power, and thus they take rebirth as lords of the four continents of the world and other forms of high rebirth like that, just in order to help others for the sake of others' aims. And the examples that are given for this are like wish-granting jewels, wish-fulfilling trees, and the excellent, here she gives it as a fine pot of treasure, but this is a kind of wish-granting vase or pot.
다 자주선배 자사지 쪄발라 라바면 자사를 쪄발라 제비 아니 제비 대부 칸데 줘래 서대부 치다 보도 세나 아니 산재 점대된 배명아위 투차발 제제 삼지 미자와 남소 대부 가르래서나 산재 점대인데 배명아위 투차바 투이차바 삼지 미자와 남소 대라메와 친지로도 슈바라 째바발라 소와 산제라 메와 친지로도 슈바 째 아니 치로와 째바발라 소와 나레스 다 대화시바 군자 말했어 대시와 대화시바네 군자 미인데 교인비체를 람소소 그 미신의 셈마오 되니 미리데 야 내가 주장.
So the next point is evidence or proof of the result of the Bodhisattva's practices, that is the omniscience of a Buddha. And so then the question is posed here, what is the result of doing the Bodhisattva deeds? And the answer is the inconceivable features of peerless, supramundane Buddha's power. And it says, even in this world, among excellent things, some are seen to be most excellent. Thus realize that certainly also inconceivable power exists. And then here it says the Mimamsakas were or are a group of non-Buddhists who it says who lack conviction. Actually, it should be you read this as who have a kind of a contrary attitude towards the Buddha. They consider the Buddha not to be an omniscient being, or they disparage the concept of Buddhahood as it's expressed in Buddhism. And so they say about this, they provide the following argument. The Tathagata, or Buddha, is not omniscient because of being a person. And so that's the syllogism is constructed with the subject being the Tathagata, the predicate being not omniscient, and being a person, the evidence or reason to establish the thesis, like any common man on the road.
Oh yeah, that 가서래 이제 미디 교훈이 임비체를 남소스 미션을 셈마 다 대미리데 최제 다지最시단 주지权益 지감 타대 대신 시와당 아니 군견 요지 지감 타대 지금 타대最시당 그것에 되는 미래지 다지最시단 주지最시 대신 시와당 군견 주지权益 지감 타대 다 당보다나 지기나 아니 最시 최전당 주시스 미대대 아니这些체제는 지 주제스 미대의 지기 비체를 분발하니 랑그 체제스 미대만 나시래. Yeah.
So then that reasoning that they employ is incorrect, is not right. And the response to that is that the basis for the argument here of this, the reason that you give, and the property which is to be established upon the thesis is, we would pose the question to you: are they identical or are they different? It's not appropriate for them to be identical. If they were identical, then the subject there would be identical, would be identical with the predicate, and that's not acceptable, because if they were identical like that, the syllogism wouldn't obtain properly at all. And so if you say they're identical, then it would be sort of like a pot being identical with some property that it possesses. So the Tathagata and omniscience can't be identical in the way that the opponent here is proposing.
오야 단위와 단아야 미대데스 타대 있으나야 미대데 시진요데 타대 있으나 미대데스 미대데 타대베 칠스 시단 최뇨데 타대위나 안에 라시지 주베 타대요고 라시지 주베 타달라 데메 대신 연구와데 안에 분바다나 분하시래 세다 니와다나야 미대데 라시 타대베 칠나 라시지 주베 타대 라시지 주베 타달라 분바다나 보신 데메 대신 인바 끝나 순서
So then in the second case, the Tathagata is also unsuitable as such, because subject and predicate are different and resemble in all respects a pot and a woolen cloth, two different things. Similarly, because of being asserted by the opponent here, the opponent assumes that the Mimamsakas, that things exist by means of their own intrinsic nature and are inherently existent. Then if the reason and the thesis are intrinsically identical, then they would be inseparably one, and if they were intrinsically different, they would be completely unrelated, sort of like the pot and the woolen cloth. No.
是吧？我呀，这些都大当他们家让心去住啊，开浪呗，是吧？大当他们家让心去住啊，开浪呗。可是，让心去住为急了，俺那让心去住为急人了，他在对面就急人过来是，让心去住为急人了，急人过了，他在对面急人过了，让心去住为他在人了。 안에 대화 매봐 범람신도 대화 매봐 대화 매배 니가 양 장신 집에 다 가를 거나양 안에 가서 그래 과자 주고 말해
고체
두자당 다的과자당 두자의 안에 가서 과자를 주고 말해 니가 양
So similarly, if one asserts, as the opponent does here, that these things are intrinsically existent, existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, then the reason and if the reason and the thesis are intrinsically one or identical, they would be inseparably. One wouldn't be able to differentiate them in any way. They would be inseparably one. And if they're intrinsically different, other than one another, they would be unrelated. Completely unrelated and not something that could be associated as it is in the syllogism. Thus, in both cases, they will not be that which is to be understood and that which enables understanding. Here, referring to the thesis and the evidence or reason, which is supposed to establish the reason. Establish the thesis.
야, 다들이 제가 이제 자체가 따바다 마셔봐서 랑중 참아미데 자이비치 임비자신도 최장 잠설 미주지 라바다 댐비치 나서바시시 최라미데부터만 규로 스타투스 송거래요.
So there's other problems that would arise for these mimamsikas, because furthermore, the subject, sound of the Vedas, is not impermanent. It would be not created. It would not be self-created or valid, authoritative, because of being sound, like a madman's utterances. And so that syllogism would obtain for those mimamsikas, which of course is unacceptable to them. Also, you would not be Brahmins, because you have hands like fishermen, and then there would be many other such unwanted entailments for you, or absurd consequences that would follow from the argument that you posited.
야, 다 되게 잊어봐와해. 대시셔와 군장만인데 교니 임비체를 세게 따대 미대박이 안에 준자데 바꿔네. 다랑로라 되나? 유 개발에 대위 개발 푸드 중앙 미바신도 세대라 푸조래 푸조와 세대 유 개발 푸드 중앙에 대위 개발 푸드 중앙 미바티신도 푸조래 푸조와 군장 양여버 칼량 니데 캬바도 파신 푸드 조와라 체 푸드 조와 캬바도 파바 안 조와 가시 지된디야 나데세 어디랑 가시 지된디야 난 세데 푸드라 자체와 바 가시 지된디야 나데세 르지 푸드 조와 참세당 제네지 푸드 조와 내지 왕고잖아 사츠세 좋아 시제 내 토쇼디 반장 수목이 내가 시제 리푸드 중앙 리탐적거는 리랍 여유푸드 중앙 콜리규 자오 통화 되나 아니 가서래 혼도 좀 되나 아니 여유푸드 중앙 가서 여유푸드 중앙 콜리규 자오 통화 굉장히 되나 장주 선반 남지 가와 참여도 초사비 투래 가와 참여 섬도 초사비 투래 시비 푸드 중앙 아니 요시와 그 푸드 중아 티시 시와나 제 삼지 미제베 퇴양 네와라에 제 따바 기시 세다 대나 삼지 미제 대나 삼미 캡트양 네와에 제 따바 기세 어 티시 시와나 제 삼지 미제베 퇴양 네와에 제 따바 기시
So then, that's disproving the position that's held by these mimamsakas who reject the idea of omniscience, and particularly as it pertains to a Buddha or Buddhas or any other omniscient beings. And however, within our own system, we can say that therefore, just as the excellent features of an effect are seen to arise through the special features of its cause, the existence of omniscience too can certainly be accepted. Among exceptional and excellent things, some which are particularly excellent are seen even in this world. The Brahmin caste is seen to be as the most excellent caste. The peak of existence is the most excellent place to be reborn, excellent state of rebirth. Mount Meru is the most excellent mountain, and a universal monarch is the most excellent of kings. Thus, you should realize that superlative awareness and the inconceivable power of Tathagatas definitely exist because of the stores of merit that are accumulated by bodhisattvas over three countless eons.
Oh yeah, kunja yoba tuche lula matemba. Lungitan Juba Mayimba, Riben Juba Dian Kalawa Chao. Sanje Jisuku, Sanje Mimba Dubani, that Casore Jupta Oma, Lodeva Cheramo, Lodo Cheramo Tabu. Sanje Jisuku, Sanje Mimba Dubani, Juba will Yimbe, and Chimi Tawashi to Tower Chao, Nandela. Rande yoarata o sanje ji sugu sanje member de bane jeba bi luyin be chimi tawashi do towa chao no bena dumaji pumbanja nyawar jola ani kasa gejong ge ken shinde ta dewal daro so
So then, so one should, this proof of omniscience is established through reasoning without needing to rely upon scriptural citations, the authority of Scripture. And then, likewise, so this is in response to what the Mimamsakas say, that the proof of omniscience can be established through reasoning without needing to rely upon scriptural authority. The assertion that the Buddha's body is not a Buddha is here. This is held by some of the lower schools of Buddhist philosophy within Buddhism itself, and that's actually equal to the contention of the Mimamsakas that Buddhas don't exist, and so that should be thrown out like a gob of spit. The analogy is given of how 100 jars of oil were acquired with the help of a monk to illustrate the way in which a bodhisattva, through their actions, can become a Buddha. And that's given in Chandrakirti's commentary.
Yeah. That's what. Share member, no member. Any teaching letter be good than Batella. Oh. Lula Shindu subject la Java Chita Jawata. Tishin Shan la Shindu ne Meju Chela Java K. Sewote Sunduda Yang Chi Junjan Chi Semjan Paji Tiba Chimbo la Jachin. Oh, Jachin. Sanje Toba Chidu Kuba Michi Jena. That is real Michi Jena. Sita. Mewa membi chiro, Michijana mewa membi chiro, Tubaji mewa membi chiro. Didar Lo Majawi Lumbo La Anti O Dakonto Tajina Shishavari Rimba Shinto Lo Majawaki Lumbo La Lula Shindu Sabje La Didar Lo Majawi Lumbo La Shindu Savi Che Dende Ranshinji Majeba O Dende Ranshinji Majeba 차시 탐제 태바라 랑신지 마주와라 아니 차시 탐제 아니 가서 태바라 잡아 짜바께와 치다와 신도 어디 다 주다 엄마들도 가데디다 군도나 중화매지 주밤에 파베데마 시오남 켈라메바 타와 주르소 아나시체네 라시지 주에 맞게나 라시지 주밤에나 아니 차와 차지 연구 말했어 데마시 연구 말했어 누구뉴라 저부터 동아 데마 여와 동아 데마 연구 말했 아니 동아 군중 번제지 남대래 저부 과장 토바 연구 말했어 대리게 차지 매매하지 딴지랑 신지 맞게 발라 차체 대발라 짜바께와 치다와 신도 내가先발라 신도 매도 신도니 매도 준비 최사모 최사와당 야치위 티바치보다 산제지 투푸도 중앙라 짜바께와 주로 새로 인상 최사모 때나 짜바께와 인상 아니 좀 된대지 리시 최미송 무슨 와대 자실을 소환하지 대지 현배 최다 이定도 가와 천주바 투비 천반을 잡도로바 주와 인사에 다 두스 용거인 말이야.
So then next comes an explanation of the reason why people of inferior intellect or of inferior minds are frightened of the Mahayana. They're frightened of the Mahayana teaching. And this is given in the, here it says, poses a question, why are most people afraid of the great vehicle and uninterested in attaining Buddhahood? And then the answer that is given is because of their weak conviction. I think Möba here, conviction is maybe a little loose. One could translate that as they have weak sort of, how to translate that? Möba, how would you translate Möba there? Jamba, Möba, intention. It's something. It means something like aspiration, maybe here, but anyway, she gives weak conviction. It means sort of like weak sort of interest in something that's admirable and that one wants to attain. So the verse here says, just as the ignorant feel afraid of the extremely profound teaching, so the weak feel afraid of the marvelous teaching. So the commentary here says, the ignorant, whose minds are untrained, feel afraid of the very profound teaching of dependent origination, free from inherent production, with the feasibility of actions and agents. I would modify that a little bit. So here, thus, those foolish people who have not trained their minds, they are terrified of the extremely profound dharma of dependent origination, which is things not having arisen by means of their own intrinsic nature, but within that, their functionality being entirely demonstrable. So this is the teaching in which even things that are dependently originated are devoid of any kind of intrinsic nature, yet they're able to function in causal relationships as agents and actions, and that those causal relationships can be, and other forms of relationships can be demonstrated rationally. They're demonstrable. So they're terrified of that, because when they hear that something is devoid of intrinsic nature, they think that it has to be non-existent. They can't establish any kind of relationship among things which are devoid of intrinsic nature or intrinsic existence. They think, for example, as it says in the basic verses on wisdom, Master Nagarjuna says that the opponent says that in your, to paraphrase, in your view, if the Four Noble Truths are not intrinsically existent, then they don't exist whatsoever. There's no way to establish suffering, the origin of suffering, cessation, and path, because they don't intrinsically exist. So for people that are unable to establish dependent origination, any of the functional relationships among things, without establishing them as being intrinsically existent, then they get terrified of the Dharma when they hear it. when they hear that profound Dharma. So just like that, those who have inferior sort of aspirations, when they hear the extremely marvelous and amazing Dharma of the profound and vast Mahayana, and they hear about the incredible power of the Buddhas, then they give rise to terror. They're terrified to just hear about it.
Oh yeah. That been that. I said that gelong. That Lusan gelong na yi me che wa shin su da kare na. There's a
story, it was like King Surupa who had no faith in the monks.
Oh, yeah. Not the Changes of Jabala, the Tachema. Queen Yemi Laba some chattes. Look, remember Tabaki, she is a Queen Yemi, Takon to Shabana, Queen Yema Laba Samni. Anita, look, remember Yerang. Nam ani traba kiwi shi o ani sami lamjirin bata jachewe lamjirin bi ani tejenji lamdir shude ani changju jela duba nyingbo cha songare da.
So there's an verse which summarizes the content of this exposition or chapter. It says, having considered the faults of samsara well, enter this profound and extensive great vehicle, of which those with poor intelligence feel afraid, and make bodhisattva deeds your quintessential practice.
Yeah, that is 가서 산지세변 대 신사와체 로와 쩌바다바데 다 여기 친구라 럽조당 누용오시라 럽조도 다시 담보 어느 곳에 장주지 셈게 되네 아니 적고저 장주 셈을 마시려 관에 대한담에 셈 담보게 되네 대한담 셈 대한담에 셈 담보게네 사 담보네 아니 사주의 파도 아니 파진지 냠내라 체사바 저 관에 공도 폐리 어단이 파진주 저와 어두시다 랑지면지 판지 주당 현지면지 도용오시라 로주다 두시잖니 다 로지 세찬니 다 디제라 다 데레샤 가소레 니와 아니 저바테다 권에 공도 폐와 쳐봐라 아니 가서래 케이트 가르래서나 그 아니 싸워다녀你们把这大一扎，他这大给你们帮we他下把的一把的，是吧？他得了，驴熊下把你驴熊下把他驴参加这把你年战了，他不了，驴是为各都来进你们帮我对吧？嘎巴汤，他帮we他下把是，他驴是为是弄阿去是为，各都进来的你们帮我对吧？嘎巴，他骑着我对他给他，我得送过来。대외 대자 폐주신 누베죠 아니 대화 계획 대자 폐주신 누베 아니 초화 폐주나 동아가 초화 폐주나 지대가도 제매신 동아 두바가도 지인 두바가도 전지인 도인년도 지외 장수 선반이 구바 군지 내 코와인라 자주삼바 괜히 구박군지 내야 돼 코아래 코아지위 주대 레다 녀모바니 임배 아니 두지 레다 녀모발라 아니 찾자발라 아니 잡아라 차오
So this concludes then that the fifth exposition or fifth chapter, and which indicates briefly the conduct of a bodhisattva in a sort of initial fashion. The point being that once one's developed an understanding of the defects of samsara, as they were outlined in the earlier chapters, and develop a revulsion towards samsara, which induces you to achieve liberation from samsara, then in addition to that, one has to develop an admiration for the good qualities of a Buddha, a wish to become a Buddha, so as to free all other sentient beings from samsara. And then, so briefly in that chapter, some of the practices of the Bodhisattva are indicated. Once one develops the aspirational form of bodhicitta, the wish to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, then one develops the strong resolution to actually engage in the practices, develops the active form of bodhicitta, which entails the actual practices of the 6 perfections and so forth. The 6 perfections primarily pertain to maturing oneself, developing oneself towards becoming a Buddha, and then the 4 practices of attracting disciples so as to help others proceed along the path towards the achievement of Buddhahood. Those are the main practices of the Bodhisattva in brief. And then once one has gone through that, then the next chapter, the 6th exposition, explains the method by which one can get rid of the mental afflictions, which are the principal obstruction to performing the practices. So once one is engaged in the Bodhisattva path, the main obstacle that one has to overcome is the mental afflictions, that both the primary mental afflictions as well as the auxiliary or subsidiary mental afflictions are all obstacles that need to be gotten rid of. Beginning of this chapter has multiple subdivisions. There's first of all, there's an exposition which negates the idea that mortifying one's body by means of extreme ascetic practice is able to free oneself from karma and mental affliction. And that's what's introduced in the first verse here, verse 126, which says, if desire increases through pleasure and anger increases through pain, why are those with pleasure not ascetics? Why are the ascetics those with pain?
Oh yeah. 아니 가데 대단한 라도 중화남라 캄바츠바 ngajawadang. 카사 로자와 나와 미르바 주데 대다기 대와다 제수주베 대자 폐와 규에 토마 대자 기위시 아니 술라서 요 빵을 차고 그래. 류 사장기 실와당. 아니 자 봐봐라 써봐라 아니 동안원 발래 동안원 발라래 동안원 발라 내가 니모 받쳐be 까도 짠시 차오 세나
So thus, since the source of all trouble lies in samsara, which is caused by contaminated action, contaminated karma, and mental affliction, bodhisattvas who act as the dear friends to migrating beings encourage disciples to put an end to such actions and mental afflictions. So then someone might say, if that is so, it is unreasonable to give the ordained monks and nuns buildings that are built 500 levels of bricks high, and food that's tasty with 100 flavors. Since these are pleasurable, they will increase desire. From the outset, one should therefore avoid things like visible forms that arouse desire. People should undergo manifest forms of suffering by mortifying their bodies with heat and cold, letting their hair become matted, and so forth. People who do that are ascetics, and in that way they overcome their contaminated karma and mental affliction.
Oh yeah, Tenita. 가서 류 론제라서 대외 대자 표와 규신스 내가 주단제와 반자이나 리슨 두배 초와 리슨 동아와에 아니 초와 표와 규에 태양 방권나 저 대외 대자 표제지 두배 초와 표주나 대양 안에 가서 대양 방권나 균전지 대화단 대바 거두제 민신 대화단 대바 거두제 민신 세지어바당 세마사바 세지어바다 니라지 시위 누바 거두제 지인 거두제 지인데 니몬 좀발라 거두제 세지 리동아지 세발라 거두제 세그마레 온
So the response to that is that if pleasure from one's body and possessions increases desire, and pleasure as well as its causes should be avoided, physical and mental pain, which increase anger, should be avoided also. Why are those who have pleasure not ascetics, and why are the ascetics those who fast and experience pain that the sun and the wind inflict on their bodies? Those who overcome contaminated actions and mental afflictions are real ascetics, or called ascetics, not those who torment the body.
Oh yeah, I didn't cause it all. Some day there's a jaw garbage to say rub to Juana Soala, and it's a good name on the desert jaw garbage to, and it's ambient that Juni Song, it's Kazaki Chabala. Nella Chapapon, Kola Chapapon, or Dennis Ella Chapapon, La Soa, Gitaka Chidu, and Kazaki Chabala, Jambi, and the Junior Nala. Shedan Janamla, Shedan Jawa, Gabi Chidu, Sagu Cha, Sadan Chugos, or Chanoma Nebe, Numon Jumba, Jajawa, Konakadu, Shechao. Yeah.
So then the Bhagavan, or supramundane victor, or Bhagavan, the Lord Buddha, gave certain individuals, it says here, special individuals, 12 rules of training to prevent desire. These are special ascetic practices. To prevent anger, for those who are especially attached to food and comfort and such, he gave these special ascetic practices. To prevent anger, he gave the angry persons better food, clothing, and so forth. He allowed them to have that. Therefore, only the Shakyas, that is, followers of the Buddha, who conquer their mental afflictions should be called ascetics.
Oh yeah, that been a pushing Zive, Puram so Tabashino. You won't Zive, did I chimaka, what not over Tabajuro.
So the example to illustrate this is, just as one gets sugar and etc. from crushing sugar cane, all kinds of happiness in this life and in the future are gained by crushing the mental afflictions.
Oh yeah, that's
We'll stop there.
Rake ahun chi jawi koyugi korwe usu ri kyaupo ira shalu papo lo zambulin lu balangja
Chandra Menya Ludan Lupa